If we burned a Quran on this stage tonight, the rest of our lives would be spent in hiding, right? Because of how motivated people would be to address that pseudo problem, right? That's the world we're living in, and civilization, insofar as we have a purchase on it, is a matter of correcting for those errors. And
but
religion, for the most part, not across the board, but for the most part, is standing in the way of those course corrections.
Well, okay, there is a tremendous amount to unpack in that. I mean, and like in some sense a surprising amount. It's like, well, we're wired to feel intense empathy for individuals who are close to us, and we can be told stories in a manner that makes that system manifest itself. And everyone and their dog thinks that that's a wonderful thing, and we call that empathy, right? And empathy has a narrow domain of utility, as it turns out, because maybe if you were all who you should be, you'd be weeping constantly for the catastrophic fate of sentient beings on the earth, but you can't handle it, you know what I mean? It's that you can barely handle your own suffering, and maybe you can handle a bit of the suffering of your family, and more power to you if you could rectify that, and if you were better human beings, maybe you could expand that outwards. But the fact that our empathy doesn't scale up to the level of genocide with the same intensity that we treat instances of individual suffering isn't an indication that we're irrational. It's just an indication that we're limited.
Well,
that's not
true.
I think this is an indication of exactly the problem of our evolved structures not matching the present. Because the point is...
Well, they do match because we take care of our families.
No, but they don't match because if you encountered the starving girl, that's some sort of it's a crude measure of suffering in your local environment. Were you in the past? Now that you can encounter this girl on the television, it's not clear what it should mean to you.
Right.
Right? You can't calibrate
it might
how
mean
many...
get your act together.
Right, and so the point is, your indifference to a genocide, which is an abstraction, right, is altered should you see pictures of the bodies, for example. You shouldn't actually feel differently about the genocide in the abstract case versus the case that you're looking at the bodies. And the fact that we have access to photorealistic representations of these things is...
But it's worse than that. This is why it's actually irrational, because I can show you the case where you care at level 10 about the little girl named Leela, and you care at level 8 about the little girl named Leela and her brother named Janti, right? And you care at level 4 if I've added a few more kids, but the little girl named Leela, who you ostensibly care about, is there in each one of these, right? So it is
your
irrational.
Resources are diminished.
No, but like
you have multiplication of the suffering.
You have $10 to give away every month to help struggling humanity, and you tell me you'll give 10 to Leela this month, and then I catch you in another moment, and I say, well, you know, it's Leela and her brother, so it's like if you only can give 10. I understand, but you know, the problem is actually worse than I suspected. And you say, well, actually, I'm just going to give 8, right? It's not coherent with how much you cared about Leela in the first place.
We do know quite well that the heuristics that we use to orient ourselves in the world can be placed into frameworks where they produce contradictory outcomes. But that doesn't mean that the heuristics themselves are deeply flawed. It's a problem with the work of people like Kahneman and Tversky.
Yeah,
is they take perfectly valid heuristics
for them. We need to correct for them because they're producing a reliable result that we recognize.
Yeah, but no, you can put them in a
non-functional
situation where they produce a counterproductive response, but that doesn't mean that generally speaking in most situations they don't produce a useful outcome, because the question is, why in the hell would have they evolved if they didn't produce a useful outcome most of the time?
They evolved to live with 150 people with whom we're related and to be terrified of the people in the next valley who may want to kill and eat us.
Yes,
right?
and
that's our ancient circumstance,
right,
which doesn't map onto a common humanity of 7 billion people trying to figure out how to get to Mars without killing each other.
I want to talk about a remarkable phenomenon that is going on in Asia and Africa, namely the large-scale conversion of Muslims to Christianity. There was a complaint by a guy on Al Jazeera who said that by his count, 6 million Muslims are converting to Christianity each year.
Christians have been saying two things.
Number one, God is eternal. Eternal meaning not living forever on and on and on. Eternal in the sense of outside of time. And this concept of eternity, which seemed from a scientific point of view incoherent, now makes complete sense. If God is outside the universe, He's outside of time.
Far from being unable to escape God, there is a very real contingent of non-believers, and I would count myself among their number, who are unable by any means to discover Him, who seek and do not find, who knock and receive, as it were, no answer. I think it would be great if God existed. I really do. I would absolutely love to escape death. I would relish being the recipient of unconditional love. Less selfishly, I would love to be able to worship that which deserves to be worshipped. I just don't think it's true. Now, try as I might, look where I can, I find no response, no hint, nothing.